Now today we're going to address some of the advanced hand strikes, hand positions that we use for striking. Very frequently, the strikes can also be used in a defensive type of motion as well, where you could be striking into the temple, could also be brushing a punch coming in or some kind of a strike. So many of the offensive applications also have a defensive capability about them as well. The first one we're going to be talking about is going to be the ridge hand. The ridge hand hits in the wrist area, and there's an upper ridge and a lower ridge that's kind of like a slap, but you circle the hand outward to where you're hitting along this line from the bottom knuckle of the index finger to the bottom knuckle of the thumb along that line, ridge handing. The thumb in that one is kind of vulnerable, but it decreases the surface area and makes it a good strike to hit in along the temple, the ears, the behind the jaw, into the neck. If we turn the palm more out and we hit more from the back of the thumb down the wrist, that part of the ridge is the more well-known ridge hand, striking in that way. It's got similar body mechanics to it, like the hook punch, where one would come in and strike across this way. The ridge hand whips out and circles in to strike to areas like the temple, behind the neck, behind the ear, under the jaw, the neck, the solar plexus, into the ribs as well, much like you would do a hook, striking in that way as well. So the first one is the ridge hand. The next one we talk about is the spear hand, where the fingers are gently cupped and in one solidarity striking in like that, hitting in. So this one can dig in under the ribs, they can go into the throat, they can shoot into the eyes, and are used like a piercing kind of technique to strike into smaller surface areas that are very vulnerable. If we spread the fingers just a little bit, mimicking the feather tips of the wings, striking in that way, those type of strikes again go more towards like the eyes and the throat. I always tell people, practice these and appreciate the beauty of them, but don't really ever perform them in a real fight, because the fingers are just too vulnerable, and without really rigorous conditioning, they're just not meant to be explosively striking into targets. You're much safer to use safer strikes like the side hand, the palm thrust, the fist, things like that. Moving from the fingertips though, we can go into a 3-finger beak. We've already practiced the 5-finger beak, which ends up having 4 fingers of surface area to strike in. The 3-finger beak reduces that to make it even a smaller surface area to strike into. It's much more effective for hitting into the throat, hitting into the eyes, hitting in towards the ears, and disrupting the person, making them open and more vulnerable for powerful strikes to follow up. Going from a 3-finger strike, we also have a 2-finger strike. When I was taught this strike, they called it like a gun, like how a child would play cowboy and Indians. If they don't have a toy gun, you point the gun this way. We also see it in the sword technique, where it's the sword hand to strike in and hit. And this would be even more vulnerable because the fingers are kind of left out on their own. You can also curl it this way, so there's a little bit of support to pinch the fingers together. And striking in, again, to areas like the eyes, the throat, floater ribs, the kidneys, different things like that. Again, they're much more vulnerable to safer strikes that can even be more powerful, but this is Kung Fu, so it's part of the art of it, and it's very fun to be thinking of striking with fingers. Then we drop down from the 2-finger strike to the single finger, where it's like a little gun shooting in with just that one dot and hitting into specific areas with that as well. That can go into other places when we start talking about pressure point striking. Then we start talking about finger as if it were a needle or as if it were a knife, striking into areas such as under the nose, above the lip, under the jaw where the neck connects, into the xiphoid process, into the suprasternal notch, and into other areas as we're striking in as well. Stuff that the white crane system is famous for. And the last one that we're going to talk about today is the reverse beak. Whether you're doing a 3-finger beak or a 5-finger beak, or simply collapsing the hand like we were doing with the backhand, smacking with that back part of the hand. This one reverses and hits with the edge back here. Not this part here punching in, that would be majorly vulnerable against the wrist and probably break the wrist. But striking in with that back part of the wrist, that's even safer than the back fist, which is vulnerable because of all of the small bones in the back of the hand. But the reverse beak striking in is very valuable, whether you're using it for defense or you're using it to strike into collarbones, temples, ears, things like that that are very vulnerable. So there's 7 new techniques for advanced hand positions for the white crane. Enjoy them, and best of luck with your training. I'll see you in the next video.